Hello everyone, I'm Mustafa and my topic today is conservation of species. To start off, I want to ask you, how many of you really understand the interconnection between humans and other species? To understand the significance of my topic today, it's really important to understand this interconnection. So today I'm going to present to you many interconnections like this and explain how these species are important for maintaining a healthy ecosystem and how it's important for humans directly. I'm also going to present the arguments that for people who doesn't believe in this. This is definitely relevant and important because if you think about your future children, they're going to be affected mostly by this imbalance in the environment. By the end of this speech, you should be able to debate with anyone who says otherwise, and this will be a logical debate. So let's talk about what threatened species are. According to IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, threatened species can be divided into three categories: vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. Vulnerable species being the least prone to extinction, and critically endangered species being the most prone to extinction. Other important terms include keystone species and ecosystem engineers. Keystone species are any species on which other species rely on heavily. And ecosystem engineers are organisms that create, modify, and maintain the physical conditions of an ecosystem. So let's talk about how these threatened species are important for maintaining a healthy ecosystem. I'm going to talk about two ecosystems broadly and two briefly due to time constrictions. So firstly, in the Arctic ecosystem, we already know about the amazing, beautiful, endangered species, polar bears. Polar bears are in the apex of the food chain, and they're also very important keystone species. Low numbers of polar bears directly indicate that there's an imbalance in the environment, right? Also, polar bears most exclusively eat seals. Due to loss of habitats and global warming and melting ice, they're moving on to new food sources, mostly including fish, which is an important food source for a human, which will in turn affect human. Moreover, seals being keystone species and large animals, other animals rely on the leftovers from their big kills, most importantly the Arctic foxes. Arctic foxes are important because they're ecosystem engineers and they make their own dens. These dens support 2.8 times greater vegetation biomass. Soils from fox dens had higher nutrients. In June, they had 71% more inorganic nitrogen, and in August, it had 242% more nitrogen. Right? This vegetation is important in the Arctic, especially because this vegetation contains endangered species endangered species of plants like rosewood and bilberry. Rosewood has medicinal uses, so does bilberry. They've been used by Vikings and they're also culturally and medicinally important for the indigenous Arctic people. There are many other endangered species like the caribou, which is also important for the economic growth and the culture of the Arctic indigenous people. So let's look at the aquatic ecosystem. In freshwater ecosystem, mussels purify the water by filtering the food. But most importantly, turtles are such important keystone species that conservationists all over the world are going crazy trying to protect them. Turtles are important because they're keystone species just like the polar bears. They eat their food really fast and they recycle the nutrients for the plants and the animals in that ecosystem. They help in coastal vegetation and fertilizing plants, but most importantly, they help in maintaining a seagrass level healthy. Like they help in keeping the seagrass level healthy, and which is important for storing carbon, which in turn helps in storing carbon, global warming. Sorry. Okay, so let's move on to grasslands and floodplains of Africa. So we already know about the amazing rhinoceros, right? And rhinoceros is already extinct in most parts of the world, including North America, but it's critically endangered. That's most prone to extinction in Africa and Asia. They're not only very important keystone species, they're also very important grazers. Rhinos increase grazing lawns by 20%. So imagine how much they're helping the environment by making food for grass-eating animals like antelopes or zebras, which in turn is useful for the human beings, obviously. Okay, lastly, let's briefly talk about the forest ecosystem. Specifically in the kelp forest ecosystem, sea otters are becoming extinct and they're keystone species and very important for the specific ecosystem. Second, in the mangrove forest ecosystem, there's mangrove dwelling crabs that make holes and they're ecosystem engineers. So those holes are used by other species for as habitat, and they also help in aerating the soil and fluxing salt, which is an important issue in critical issue in mangrove forests. Okay, now let's move on to how these are directly important for humans. Let's talk about a different ecosystem like the Himalayan subtropical ecosystem in South Asia. There are many plants there which are used as medicines. One important example being picrorhiza. According to WHO, picrorhiza rhizome is useful in treating asthma and hepatitis as well as other immune diseases. Now, in North America, black cohosh is an endangered species in Illinois. Black cohosh is important in treating cholera, asthma, and so on. Vultures are another endangered species which can be used in public health causes, because if vultures' numbers starts decreasing, they're gonna stop eating those dead animals and dead anything in the environment which spreads contagious diseases. Lastly, but most importantly, these threatened species are important for maintaining the land or keeping the lands from disturbances. Undisturbed lands are important for preventing zoonotic diseases, that are diseases that jumps from animals to humans. One important example is Nipah virus. Nipah virus came from Indonesia due to disturbed lands. They jumped from bats to pigs in Malaysia and then humans in Malaysia and caused an endemic. So let's talk about how these healthy ecosystems are also important for creating job opportunities, because ecotourism is growing. Tourism is so important that in South Asia, 281.6 billion of revenues of the GDP comes yearly from tourism. Healthy ecosystem is also important for maintaining agriculture production, which makes the land more profitable and also ensures food production, which brings me to my third point, which is food security. So to understand food security, one example I'm going to place are insects and birds. Insects and birds are important pollinators, right? The most important pollinator being bees. According to Sustain, the honeybees play an essential role in pollination of commercial crops, with around 80% of the US crops said to be dependent on honeybees. So honeybees pollinate the trees, which basically means that they help in the reproduction of plants, right? Honeybees are so important because they help in pollinating commercial crops like avocados, broccoli, sunflower for oil, and so on, right? And there are many birds which works as pollinators too. So these animals and insects which are threatened are very important for maintaining food security in this world, because without them the plants wouldn't reproduce and they wouldn't be giving us commercial crops. Now, there are people, even after all of this, who are going to straight up deny climate change and are against conservation of species. Their principal arguments being that extinction is a part of evolution and that socioeconomic development is more important than environmental protection. I agree, extinction is a part of evolution, but extinction is not a driver of evolution. Survival is, right? But survival doesn't happen in one human lifetime. It's a very slow process, but due to man-made exploitation, due to human exploitation, this process is being faster, which has never been seen before. The extinctions before were caused by asteroids or like atmospheric altering volcanic eruption. This is man-made, and extinction is a part of evolution, but it doesn't drive evolution. This is very important to understand. Secondly, we already discussed the beneficial aspects of how these threatened species can create job opportunities and whatnot. Most importantly, ecotourism can certainly work as a great way to maximize profit, certainly sustainably, and they can create job opportunities for local people and provide equal distribution of revenues, right? According to the GNN Foundation of Agriculture Economics, the total income of the Galapagos Island, which heavily relies on ecotourism, increased by 78% between 1999 and 2005, placing Galapagos Island as the fastest growing economies, among one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Lastly, in regard to the present world, but necessary level of expenditure on a zoonotic disease pandemic, it is essential to understand the links between biodiversity and human health, right? As I said before, zoonotic diseases are diseases that jump from animals to humans. So one endemic, the West Nile virus endemic that was caused in North America, was endemic caused due to less number of birds. So it has been seen in a study that if there was more diversity and population of birds, this endemic could have been buffered. Lastly, the exploitation of human beings are not only threatening species, they're also threatening human itself. In the Arctics, there is a good example, which is that due to the extinction of many species, or due to many species being threatened and due to loss of habitat, this is not only affecting those animals there, this is also affecting the Arctic indigenous people, because they're losing culturally significant animals and they are also being forced to move due to lack of food and things like that. So now they're termed as climate refugees. So we can see how this threatened species is important for humans and other species in the whole world itself, and also to fight global warming. So all these points clearly explain how conservation, if done sustainably, can be a driving force for the development of the economy, and successfully explains my points and debunks the debaters' theories. In conclusion, human beings are interconnected with other species, and we cannot survive if ecosystems disappear. To regard our economic system as environmentally separate is the to regard our economic system as environmentally separate and superior is to invite the contextual basis for species degradation and decline. Thank you.